I've been watching what's been going on in France, or France, as they say in France, and there's a really big issue here that nobody's talking about. And nobody's talking about it because it's a series of inconvenient truths, largely for the Bush family, for George Herbert Walker Bush, for Jeb Bush, and for Shrub, for W. These three Bushes made huge mistakes with regard to our interactions and relationships with the Middle East that may have something to do with George Herbert Walker Bush ending up with the Carlyle Group and all the investments in Saudi Arabia and the Saudi royal family and all this kind of stuff that have led directly, in my opinion, to the murders at Charlie Hebdo yesterday in Paris. Now, I realize that sounds hyperbolic, over the top. But let me give you the timeline. This is going to take some time here. I'm going to go through this. It may take 20, 30 minutes. I don't know. We'll see. But let me just step you through this stuff. We start in 1981. In 1981, Ronald Reagan is president. George Herbert Walker Bush is vice president. And Charlie Wilson, Republican in Congress, decides that, we need to help kick the Soviets out of Afghanistan. And so he appropriates $500 million. Now, keep in mind, Afghanistan has an annual GDP of only $2 billion. He appropriates $500 million to give to Osama bin Laden and the Mujahideen to throw the Soviets out. 1981. 1982, Maggie Thatcher has been the Prime Minister of England for 3 years, maybe 4. I don't remember if she came to power in 78 or was elected in 78, came to power in 79. But right around. But in any case, in 82, she has successfully busted the coal miners union. She's privatizing things. She's becoming increasingly unpopular in the UK. She needs something to boost her popularity. So she has what she refers to as a small war, a little war, with Argentina over the Falkland Islands. She wins. Her popularity goes through the roof. The next year, the Reagan administration, they're up for this is 83, they're up for re-election in 84. And Reagan's popularity is sagging. We have one of the worst recessions in recent years, in 82 or 83. And Reagan decides he's got to have a small war, so he invades Grenada. And he gets reelected the next year in 84. George Herbert Walker Bush notices and says, oh, that's how you do it. Maggie Thatcher did it. Reagan did it. You have a little war and you win your reelection. Okay, fast forward to 1989. George Herbert Walker Bush is now president. The Soviets leave Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden leaves Afghanistan and goes home to Saudi Arabia. Next year, 1990, George Herbert Walker Bush now is the second year of his presidency. He is massively unpopular with his own conservative base because he's proposed tax increases after he said, read my lips, no new taxes to get elected. And he's thinking, I got to do something to raise my popularity. What did Reagan do? What did Thatcher do? Oh, a little war. Let's have a little war. April Gillespie goes ahead and says to Saddam Hussein, if you decide to invade Kuwait, it's not our problem. Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. George Herbert Walker Bush has his little war. To make that little war happen, and it was a little war. It was 100 hours, a three-day war. To make that little war happen, we staged an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia, the Bandar bin Sultan Air Force Base. After the war... Oh, and by the way, we got into this war with perjured testimony from a Kuwaiti princess who said that she had seen Iraqi troops throwing babies out of incubators in the hospitals in Kuwait. It was a lie. It was orchestrated by the Bush administration. It was testimony before Congress, perjured testimony. It is 1990. After Bush's small war, the first President Bush, he imposes sanctions on Iraq that will eventually kill 500,000 Iraqi children. Because one of the main things that they said Iraq can't have anymore is chlorine, because you can make it into poison gas. But that also meant they couldn't purify their water. So everybody in Iraq is drinking water straight out of the Euphrates, and kids are getting diarrheal diseases and dying left and right. So that continues, by the way, through the Clinton administration. In 1992... Osama bin Laden, he's in Saudi Arabia. He's got nothing to do. He's going nuts. And he hates Saddam Hussein because Saddam Hussein is secular. He's a secular Muslim. He lets women go to college. He lets women work. He lets male doctors see, he lets female doctors see male patients. He lets women go to school. He lets women drive. They can show their elbows. They don't have to wear a hijab. Bin Laden is totally horrified by this. And so he gets together his merry band of former mujahideen. He's now calling them Al-Qaeda. And he tries to invade Iraq to take down Saddam Hussein in 1992. The Saudi government says, wait a minute, we don't want that kind of instability in our region. They arrest Osama bin Laden and they deport him to Syria. Now, I'd originally thought it was Somalia, but Shano found an intelligence brief this morning saying it was Syria. Sudan. Oh, Sudan. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, Sudan. Now, 1996, Osama bin Laden moves his operations to Afghanistan. He's got about 5,000 hardcore followers there. He's funded by Saudi Wahhabist billionaires. And he's mostly PO'd with us for having that Air Force base in Saudi Arabia, defiling the Holy Land. In 97, he begins preaching against the United States for that Air Force base. In fact, in 98, his rant is published in the New York Times, where he threatens the United States. Also in 98, the Project for a New American Century, signed off by Jeb Bush. Now we're to the second Bush. 1998, PNAC publishes an open letter to President Clinton saying, attack Iraq now, essentially, and saying that it's going to take a Pearl Harbor-like event to get the American people to sign off on invading Iraq. But we should still do it. It's signed by Jeb, it's signed by Wolfowitz, it's signed by Rumsfeld, and a bunch of other neocons. 1999, Bill Clinton tries to kill bin Laden, fires missiles into August of 1998. Clinton sends cruise missiles, Operation Infinite Reach, and he misses Osama bin Laden by just 30 minutes. Republicans go to the floor of the House of Representatives to ridicule Bill Clinton for trying to kill Osama bin Laden, saying that he's trying to get people to stop talking about Monica Lewinsky, which is the real important issue before America. 1999, Clinton continues to try to kill bin Laden, multiple attempts. None of them are successful. 2000, the election is stolen by the Supreme Court, and Jeb Bush down in Florida knocking 90,000 African Americans off the voting rolls, and W becomes president. 2001, Bush is viewed, early 2001, George W. Bush is viewed as an unpopular, illegitimate president. And he wants to do something about it. One of the problems that we have in the United States, and particularly in Europe and Russia, is that heroin is becoming an epidemic. Why? Because the opium poppy crop in Afghanistan is huge. So he gives Afghanistan $40 million to burn the Taliban. George W. Bush gives the Taliban $40 million, says burn the poppy fields. They do. The price of heroin skyrockets. Addiction rates go down in Europe and Russia. Bush is sort of a hero for this. Okay, that's early 2001. That was March of 2001. And then, of course, 9/11 in September of 2001. After Bush had been repeatedly warned, look out for this, he completely ignored it. Cheney was in charge of the counterterrorism task force in February. He was put in charge of that in January of 2001. They never even met until September of 2001. And bang, 9/11 happens. Now it gets interesting. And I will continue this rant in about 4 minutes. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We're going through this little history lesson here to explain why France absolutely can't make the mistake, should not make the mistake that the Bush family has made.